In the summer of 1977, the prolific UFO investigator and author Andrew Collins encountered a case of alien abduction that he would ultimately exalt as the most important British case ever. Concerning an ordinary young family of 5, the events allegedly took place some 3 years prior, on Sunday the 27th of October 1974. The happenings were so traumatic, involving the late-night kidnapping of 3 young children, as well as non-consensual medical examinations by alien beings, and 3 hours of missing time, that the parents were too scared to speak out about what they had experienced. This fear is said to have worsened with time, with the family being subsequently harassed by police, stalked by shadowy men in black figures, and exposed to a whole host of terrifying otherworldly activity in their home. Ultimately, they could cope no longer, and reached out to a local UFO group in response to an article published in a local newspaper. Desperate, so they said, to come forward and get what had happened to them off their chests. Through his investigation, Collins was able to share their story with the world, recording details, drawings, and even disturbing transcripts from hypnotic regression sessions undergone by the family's father. The family, so Collins concluded, were thoroughly genuine, proving not merely that UFO and alien abduction phenomena is real, but that it can happen to any one of us at any time. My name is Laura, and you are watching The Paranormal Scholar. It was almost 10 o'clock at night, and the Avis family were on their way home after visiting mother Elaine's parents. Described as a very normal, simple, and warm East London family, they lived in a semi-detached house in Aveley, Essex. A mere 15 miles from the bustling city of London, the area was sporadically rural, and remains suitably so today. As such, on their drive home from nearby Harold Hill, they passed through patches of open countryside. Their route was usual, south from Hornchurch and along Hackton Lane, a journey of about 9 miles which ought to have taken them 20 minutes. For indeed, Father John intended to watch a play on the television that night. Setting off at 10 to 10 provided him with ample time to get home in time. And yet, unlike so many other occasions, the journey back to Aveley would not go as planned that night. Listening to the car radio, parents in the front, 2 of the children, Karen and Stuart, asleep in the back, and eldest boy Kevin awake and looking out of the window, the family are said to have noticed something strange in the sky above the houses which lined the road. It was a pale blue, iridescent light, shaped like an oval around 500 yards away. Described by the family as being akin to a bright star, it appeared to be following them, travelling in the same direction as the car, but stopping and starting as it moved. At first, the family assumed they were looking at a helicopter, and yet the longer it seemed to follow them, being obscured momentarily as they drove through a small area of woodland, it was clear that they were witnessing something unusual. Eerily, there was no other traffic on the road, and so driving through open, dark countryside, the only light that the family could see was this peculiar object. When the road turned sharply to the left, becoming Park Farm Road, the light turned also, changing its course, so it seemed, so as to continue following the car. After about half a mile, it appeared to adjust itself once again, putting it on a direct collision course with the road and the Avis family. As they approached a block of 4 terraced houses, the light disappeared from view behind thick bushes. Now on Aveley Road, it was at this moment that John and Elaine were consumed by the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Entering a bend at 30 miles per hour, the air around them is said to have changed. Sound faltered, with neither the engine nor the tires of the car being audible. The only sound was that of the radio. That too, however, ultimately disappeared, as ahead of them on the road, just as they came through the bend, they were confronted by a wall of green mist. Dense, some 8 to 9 feet high, it covered the road in front of them. the radio cut out, crackling and smoking, causing John to let go of the steering wheel and pull out the wires. With that, the lights in the car died also, and the engine faltered. Still travelling at 30 miles per hour, the Avis family was subsequently engulfed by the green fog. And it was not like any other fog that they had ever experienced. Curling around the exterior of the car, the green atmosphere was chillingly cold. Karen and Stuart still asleep in the back, the 3 other occupants struggled to maintain consciousness. Everything was hazy and silent, and there was a tingling sensation that made it difficult to determine anything, even whether or not the car was still moving. Even so, the experience seemed to last no more than a mere second or 2. Then there was a jolt, like a car going over a humpback bridge, and the green fog was gone. The car lights returned, as did engine functionality, meaning that John was able to continue driving his family home. Elaine did, however, for reasons she at the time did not understand, ask, "Is everybody here?" She and John were both very nervous and frightened, but everyone was indeed there. Kevin awake and looking out of the window, and Karen and Stuart in undisturbed slumber. When they arrived home, the sleeping children were carried to bed, and John, exhausted, sat down to watch his television program. It was then that he and his wife realized the incredible. It was 1 a.m. Their 20-minute journey had taken 3 hours. In the months that followed, the Avis family experienced incredible changes. Their personal relationship with food and drink altered, with all members of the family bar the youngest, Stuart, switching to a vegetarian diet. Meat, once eaten in abundance, now provoked not merely nausea, but physical illness in the Avises, with the parents especially also acquiring suddenly and previously out of character strong views regarding humanity's destruction of the planet and plentiful slaughter of animals. Alcohol was likewise eschewed. In addition, John, previously a heavy smoker, happily smoking some 60 to 70 cigarettes a day, completely and suddenly abandoned the habit after the experience. By Christmas, he suffered a nervous breakdown, with him being forced to quit his job and remain out of the workforce until the following September. And so whatever had happened that night in October, specifically during those missing 3 hours, affected the Avis family at a fundamental level. Their world was turned upside down. Not merely that, external forces seemed to be having an impact. The family claimed that they were regularly followed by cars with tinted windows. In particular, they noted that the same 3 cars followed them well into the summer of next year. They were also, so they later claimed, stalked by men in black type figures, even describing how on one occasion 2 sat in a parked car opposite their house from 9 p.m. until 1 a.m. Ultimately, John was forced to phone the police to get rid of them, with the officer who arrived also acting suspiciously, turning up on their doorstep, so the family claimed, too quickly and without proper ID. This person supposedly drove away with the other 2 oddly behaving men. Such stalking is said to have continued, with the family's telephone ringing on multiple occasions without there being anyone on the other end, or, in the worst case, only the sinister sound of heavy breathing. This seeming campaign of harassment culminated in John, when out and about in his car, being persistently stopped by men claiming to be police officers. At its peak, this was said to have happened at least 5 times a week, with John, in order to comply with the law, being forced to attend his nearest police station so as to produce all relevant documents each and every time. This lasted for around a month. And as unsettling as these happenings were for the family, they were arguably minuscule compared to some of the other events reported by John and Elaine. At home, doors closed to the outside world, they were disturbed by bizarre noises and what can only be described as eerie poltergeist-like activity. Objects moved around the house, even when the children were not at home. Droning noises were heard, mostly after midnight, as though something was approaching and then hovering over the house. The sound would get louder, horrifyingly so, before cutting out to absolute silence. In time, this became such a regular occurrence that others, including Elaine's sister Anne, would hear it too when they would visit the house so as to babysit. Other auditory anomalies included mysterious clicking noises, and even something that, so the family claimed, sounded like Morse code. Such was heard once again late at night in John and Elaine's bedroom. The meaning of the sounds was not, despite attempts, able to be discerned. Perhaps most chilling of all, however, was the claim made by their young son, Kevin. Sometime during 1975 or 1976, he woke in the middle of the night to see a strange man standing by the side of his bed. The figure, so the boy claimed, resembled a clown. Dressed in white, there was little John and Elaine's son could remember other than the figure's appearance, and how terrified it made him feel. His parents likewise alleged horrific nighttime experiences, including fragmented flashes of dreams in which they were being medically examined by gnomes or similarly small, ugly-looking things. And so, by the time researcher and author Andrew Collins became involved in the case in 1977, the Avis family were exhausted by their experience and its aftermath. Encouraged to reach out after reading an article on UFOs in their local newspaper, they also wanted to get what had happened to them off their chests and, if at all possible, understand it better. Collins and fellow UFO researcher Barry King arranged to meet with John and Elaine on the 15th of August 1977. The first step, so Collins explained in the article he published the following year, was to establish the facts of the case via interviews. This achieved, he also set about proving some of the details of John and Elaine's story, such as the length of time that their October night journey ought to have taken, as well as the time that the television program they returned home expecting to watch was broadcast. He also tested their pre-existing knowledge of UFOs and famous abduction cases, including the arguably similar 1961 Betty and Barney Hill incident. Aside from basic general knowledge of extraterrestrial phenomena gathered through one or two television programs that they had seen, the couple knew little. In Collins' words, it seemed that their knowledge of the subject was very limited. And so, suitably impressed as to the genuineness of their claims, the researcher then suggested that the couple undergo hypnotic regression. This, after all, may be the way to unlock the secrets as to their missing 3 hours. And yet, the Avises, Elaine especially, were reluctant. As terrible as their experiences, both original and ongoing, had been, they were fearful as to where hypnotic regression could lead. Even so, John ultimately agreed. After all, the trauma of that night was still haunting him and his family. The nightmares, for example, of gnomish creatures and medical experimentations were not going away. The Avises had to find out what had happened to them during those lost 3 hours. And so it was on the 25th of September 1977 that John, along with Andrew Collins, Barry King, and a couple of other researchers, met with Dr. Leonard Wilder, a dental surgeon who had, for the past 20 years, used hypnotism to conduct research into reincarnation. The first session did not result in regression. John was said to have been very worried, almost cancelling the appointment at the last minute, and so the doctor instead focused on putting his mind at ease and performing what are described by Collins as basic arm levitation exercises in order to assess his suitability and sensitivity towards hypnotism. It was concluded that John was indeed a very good subject, meaning that a second session was arranged for the following Sunday. It was on this day that some of the most shocking and sensational details about the Avis family's experiences were revealed. Again joined by Andrew Collins and other researchers, John was put into a state of hypnosis by Dr. Wilder. Regressed back through his childhood, stopping at the ages of 13, 11, 5 and then 3, John's voice is said to have changed each time, sounding more and more childlike. Happy with this response, Dr. Wilder then asked to hypnotize John to recall the night that he and his family drove home to Aveley. He first asked him to talk about the light that had followed their car. It was low, John is recorded as having said, bright and not one colour. He then went on to explain, in fragmented, mesmeric speech, how he and his family had driven into a very, very thick and green mist, with no lights and no noise all around. Prompted by the doctor to describe what happened next, a hypnotized John is claimed to have said, "into a big room." There, he explained, he was separated from his children. Not to worry, John mumbled, hypnotized. That is what the beings had told him and Elaine. What followed next, revealed through this second hypnotic regression session, is nothing short of terrifying. After driving into the green mist, John and his family are said to have been taken on board an alien craft, specifically a big room where he, separated from his wife and children, interacted with two species of alien. The first were described as tall and arguably eerie given the sinister nature of the situation, peaceful. They wore some manner of one-piece suit, which covered nearly all of them, aside from a small portion of their face. The colour of their skin was translucent or hollow-looking, and their eyes were said to have been very pink. When they communicated with John, they did so, he suggested, telepathically. "I thought what they were saying," John explained, hypnotized. These tall entities are said to have watched on as John was examined by a second species of being. Lying on some manner of peculiar examination table, John is said to have experienced a flat bar pass over the length of his body, seemingly scanning him. This medical machine was operated by a small, servile, fur-covered being. In time, both John and Elaine would produce sketches of the aliens they met on board the craft. Over the course of John's third meeting with Dr. Wilder, a session which a scared Elaine reluctantly attended also, if only to witness and not participate in, John revealed further details about his and his family's abduction experience. This time, being directly interviewed by researcher Andrew Collins, John spoke more about the alien he described as the Examiner. This being's face, so he said, mumbling, hypnotized, was not very nice. It had big eyes and a mouth unlike ours. As the session continued, more questions were put to John. The answers were stranger and more sinister than anything that had come before. "Why have they come here?" asked Dr. Wilder. "To observe and to lead," was John's reply. "They said they need us as hosts." When asked where the beings had come from, John, still hypnotized, told the doctor that there was no need for them to say, as they had no need to return to where they had come from. They, chillingly, were here to stay, to observe and to lead humankind. "No visit," Collins recorded John as having said. "No visit. They are here always." John then said that the beings have more than one base on Earth. When asked where, he no longer responded. Silent, still hypnotically regressed, neither Dr. Wilder nor Collins could get John to say any more. Slowly, he was brought back to normal consciousness. Discussing his experience afterwards, he told Collins that he felt as though he had been blocked during the session. He, even hypnotized, had been prevented from saying anything more about the beings who had abducted him. Given the eerie nature of John's hypnotic regression sessions, it is arguably no surprise that Elaine maintained her position of not wanting to undergo the same. Regardless, watching her husband's session and more generally discussing her experiences with Andrew Collins and other researchers is said to have triggered remembrance in the young mother's mind. Dreams, which before had been fragmented and ephemeral, became more vivid. With both Elaine and John, the more that they explored their experiences, able to share additional information with Collins. As Collins wrote in his 1978 article, The hypnosis sessions were valuable in that they began the process of unburdening the witnesses' subconscious memories, allowing for their conscious memory to return to them. Not only that, they, so Collins explained, militate against the idea that the Avis family got their heads together to perpetrate an almighty hoax. After all, John's sessions, carefully transcribed for publication in journals at the time, were overseen by medical professionals, and as such were widely considered remarkably genuine. With this in mind, the additional details provided by the Avis family can be said to elevate this case once more, truly justifying the opening claim made by Andrew Collins of the Aveley abduction representing one of the most important British cases ever. Certainly, both John and Elaine were able to, independently of one another, describe and even draw the beings that had abducted them. Extraordinarily, there can be said to be a high level of similarity between husband and wife. Not only that, their experiences whilst on board the alleged alien craft can be said to be very much the same. Separated from their children, John and Elaine were then separated from each other, each being led away by a tall, suited leader figure through a hole in the wall which was made to appear by the being. Beyond the hole was a room. This space, big, grey and oval, was where, for both John and Elaine, the examination took place. Lying, and in Elaine's case strapped to an examination table, the small third examiner entity is said to have operated various scanner-like instruments, watched always by the tall beings. John, in one of his many interviews with Andrew Collins, claimed that he felt a warm tingling sensation in the region the scan was immediately covering. There was also a pen-like apparatus, which the examiner used on all parts of the couple's bodies, with Elaine reporting that the being paid particular attention to her left side, around the region of her kidney. She did not know why. Regardless, she was very frightened and struggled against her straps. At this point, she told of how one of the tall entities advised her that they couldn't do anything with her while she was like that, and then proceeded to place his middle finger on her forehead and his two outer fingers on the outside of her eyes, causing her to black out. Horrifyingly, this was not the only time that the couple reported being made to black out or have their consciousness altered in some way by the tall suited beings. John, for example, upon being brought into the examination room through the magically appearing hole, is said to have blacked out after one of the tall entities touched his left shoulder. Then, later on in the abduction, when Elaine, still distressed at having been forcibly separated from her children, refused to consume food that the entities offered to her, food which she suspected may have been drugged, she was exposed to some manner of mind control. One of the beings, concerned by her distress, offered to play her some music. Bizarrely, the being then used their mind and their hands, twiddling their fingers slowly so as to create a soothing sound, similar to a high-pitched harp. Upon hearing it, Elaine felt herself slowly relax, even as her mind raced for her children. Sensing her continuing concern, the being is reported as having said to her, "Your children are safe. You value your children. We do not reproduce. We do not have children. We reproduce through you. You are our children." Undoubtedly, such a statement is terrifying, especially when considered in relation to some of the other details reported by John and Elaine. The fixation on examining their physical bodies, and even the fact that at some point during the abduction, presumably one of the many times the couple were unconscious, the beings are claimed to have undressed them, changing them into one-piece suits similar to those which the tall beings themselves wore. And, of course, the eerie statement revealed during John's second hypnotic session: "They need us as hosts." As the abduction progressed, the initial medical examination over, John and Elaine claimed to have been given a tour of the alien craft, with both of them being instructed to lie down and watch a screen. This screen, so they both reported, displayed a series of rapid images, of maps and pictures and diagrams, too rapid for either John or Elaine to properly remember. Each image was, so John explained, accompanied verbally, with a voice inside his mind providing a complete explanation for each. When he expressed to the tall being who was with him that the images were moving too fast for him to remember, he was told, once again, not to worry. It is all being remembered by your mind, the entity is said to have communicated to him. For Elaine, she too struggled to recall any of what she had been shown, telling Andrew Collins that the experience was akin to having the contents of an encyclopedia pumped into one's head all in one go. Something that both John and Elaine did remember, however, was being shown some manner of advanced hologram. It was a planet, specifically, so they alleged to have been told, the planet of the beings in its last years. Ruined by pollution and other natural problems, the beings explained that it had been lost, along with 2 of their suns and 1 of their moons, through misuse. In Elaine's testimony, she recalled being told, "This is where we come from," and then, "This is the seed of life, our past and your future, our whole existence." Oddly, John also reported, something which he was told by the beings, that in addition to how they travelled to Earth to use humans as hosts, that they are us. Describing how the beings came to Earth, John explained that they were able to travel very fast, almost instantaneous. This, so he was told, was achieved by using some sort of activator that was able to convert particles and manipulate gravitational forces that thus moved the craft. As for navigating Earth's atmosphere, the ship is said to have utilized something called magnetic drive, once again suggesting particle manipulation. Ultimately, the abduction ended with John and Elaine being returned to their car and their children, while the 2 youngest, Karen and Stuart, appeared to have remained asleep on the back seat of the vehicle for the entire length of the experience. Their eldest son, Kevin, who had been awake at the point of driving into the mysterious green mist, had seemingly been taken elsewhere on the craft to have his own abduction experience. 10 years old at the time, his parents understandably did not want him to undergo hypnotic regression, and indeed did not even allow Andrew Collins to talk all that much with him. "I have only been allowed to speak to Kevin twice concerning the incident," the researcher wrote in his article. It is, however, reported that the boy once turned to his father and, quite out of the blue, said, "They gave me a lot of things to do when I grow up, but I've forgotten them all." And certainly, whatever these things to do may have been, the family, as has already been discussed, made many lifestyle changes after their abduction experience. From vegetarianism to abandoning alcohol and smoking and synthetic colorings and preservatives in foodstuffs. Not inherently negative choices by any stretch of the imagination. And yet, for all of this, it is difficult to ignore the undeniably sinister nature of what the Avis family experienced that night in 1974. After all, this is by no means the only instance of alien abduction that sees supposed abductees be exposed to what can only be described as environmentalist propaganda. Images of natural destruction, a planet doomed through waste and misuse. And whilst we can all agree that pollution and a lack of care in regards to natural resources are problems we face here on Earth, it is distinctly distasteful to consider how an extraterrestrial species might regard it as their duty to abduct, examine, indoctrinate, and thus forcibly make mankind understand these issues, all because they want to help us, naturally. But perhaps I am getting ahead of myself. For certainly what the Avises reported is incredible, sensational, shocking, difficult to believe, meaning that there is no way we can be certain as to the truth of their supposed experiences. Indeed, whilst Andrew Collins seems to have been suitably impressed, most especially in regards to John's hypnotic regression sessions, it is not absurd to suggest that prior to their interviews, John and Elaine may have colluded so as to present similar narratives to the researcher. Ditto their artwork. Whilst we are told that these similarities were produced independently of one another, as a married couple, John and Elaine would have had plenty of opportunities to fabricate a suitably believable, coherent fantasy before meeting with researchers like Collins. And yet, whilst it is appropriate, especially when discussing things such as this, to deploy a healthy dose of skepticism, motive must also be considered. John and Elaine Avis are pseudonyms. It took them 3 years to come forward to discuss what had happened to them, and in the aftermath, as far as can be discerned, they made no attempt to commercialize their experiences or profit from them in any way. They simply, as they told Collins, wanted to get what had happened to them off their chests. They were a normal family, a normal, scared family. And so what would have been the purpose in perpetrating a hoax? There is no obvious answer. Of course, that is not to say that all of what has been discussed here is true, only that the reason why it might not be is not abundantly clear. Moreover, the similarities between their alleged abduction experience and those of others is, in short, astonishing. The most obvious, of course, is the Barney and Betty Hill incident of September 1961, during which an American couple driving back in their car to Portsmouth, New Hampshire, from a vacation in Niagara Falls and Montreal, at first witnessed a UFO before being abducted. The UFO, similar to the Avis family's testimonies, was said to have been bright and moving, and the abduction, once again similar to the Avises, was revealed through hypnotic regression sessions.
This creature, this leader is telling me something.
He's telling you something. How is he getting it to you?
I can see it in his face. His lips aren't moving.
What did he tell you?
Stay there and keep looking. Just keep looking.
Could you hear him tell you?
Oh, I gotta pull these binoculars away from my eyes.
Could you hear him tell you this?
Oh, no, he didn't say it.
You felt he said it.
It's
All right.
pounding in my head. Just
All right.
pull the binoculars away. God, give me strength. Pull these binoculars down and run. God.
Vivid, recurring dreams, odd buzzing sounds at home, and even thought transference communication with the beings who abducted them. Again, perhaps the Avises were seeking to imitate this high-profile case. But again, to what end? Most especially as, according to Andrew Collins, neither John nor Elaine had any knowledge of the Hill abduction. Another case of note in the Aveley abduction is that of the Green Man of Ickley Moor. Taking place in December 1987, this story alleges an encounter with a small green being by a former police officer in open countryside in Yorkshire, England. The man is said to have been subsequently abducted, something which was only revealed under hypnosis after he was, like the Avis family, pursued by mysterious men in black. During his abduction, he, again similar to the Avises, was shown some manner of distressing film whilst on board an alien craft. Similar in theme to that which John and Elaine reported, the film supposedly contained lots of scenes of destruction, including starving people and waste going into rivers. The man is also reported to have been shown a second film by his abductors. However, when asked under hypnosis what the second film contained, he simply replied, "I'm not supposed to tell anyone about the other film. It's not for them to know." Just as in John's experience, the beings, so it seemed, were able to influence and restrict the mind of someone they had abducted, even whilst in a hypnotically regressed state. Ultimately, like John and Elaine before him, this abductee chose to remain anonymous. He was not interested in fame and fortune, only in sharing an incredible and terrifying thing that had happened to him. And so, if one is to consider that these experiences have even a kernel of truth in them, you must forgive me for not buying the alleged aliens' story about them being here to help us. Time and time again, abduction experiences prove the opposite. Abductees, even if they claim to be privileged by what they have seen, are left traumatized, even making changes to their lifestyles, with environmentalism being the most popular. Indeed, those who have worked with alleged abductees in the capacity as therapists have been reporting this trend for decades, with it not unusual for abductees to uproot their lives in the aftermath of an experience, quite literally, in some cases, running off into the wilderness to start afresh as park rangers or environmental activists. Of course, as has been said, this may not be inherently unhealthy, but, all things considered, does make one wonder as to the true motives of these sinister, seemingly mind-controlling, shape-shifting, abducting entities. Physically weak, but mentally strong, it may be that by showing humans distressing films of destroyed planets whilst medically examining them and taking away their children, they are attempting to force an outcome that favours them, but ultimately not us. A way to disarm, to erode their enemy before invasion. The precise details are ghastly to consider. Before concluding this case, I want to focus on what may be an overlooked detail in the Aveley abduction. After all, it is easy, no doubt, to get lost in the sensational claims of tall beings and ugly furred examiners and impressive planetary holograms. Such makes it tempting to dismiss it all as nonsense. In this way, it is in the mundanity that we might find a slither of much-needed realism. Describing his abduction experience to Andrew Collins, John said, rather as a throwaway comment, that the craft environment in which he found himself was rather bland. Everything was either colourless or grey. The lighting was low, and the only smell that he could remember was whilst he was being examined. Something akin to ozone, a gas with a distinctly pungent odour. Nothing more was said about this in Collins' report, and arguably why should it have been elaborated upon? Details about the beings and what they were doing to the couple are arguably far more interesting. And yet the smell of ozone can be said to be the mundane realism that those of us struggling to believe this case and wider abduction phenomenon may very well need. After all, given the context of the claim that the Avis family were abducted, taken on board an alien vehicle that not only travelled across space at high, almost impossible speed, but was also capable of navigating the Earth's atmosphere at low orbit, a smell akin to ozone is highly relevant. As part of my ongoing research, I have spoken to an anonymous source with a US Air Force background, specifically in regards to space warfare, who claims that an ozone-like smell makes good sense in terms of extraterrestrial craft. In the course of our dialogue, they highlighted Invar, a nickel-iron alloy with anomalous thermal and magnetic properties, useful for aerostructure applications, explaining how it produces an odd smell when mixed with the air or skin. According to their professional experiences, the closest thing this smell resembles is ozone, being very sharp, chemically, and not pleasant at all. Given the claim made by John and other abductees that these beings are able to travel very fast and in low orbit, it would make sense for their crafts to be constructed of or using materials with high dimensional stability. Invar, an alloy which demonstrates a relative lack of expansion or contraction with temperature changes, may be one such material, able to withstand the physical pressures that come with the high level of acceleration required for space travel and low Earth orbit. That John somehow knew this, mentioning the smell of ozone, can be said to be the detail that makes his testimony extremely compelling indeed. My contact also revealed in cloaked and covert terms that the US Air Force is already using this material in classified devices that are designed for low Earth orbit. And so, whatever these things are, and wherever they might come from, I would caution against disbelieving in all cases, most especially when the details are as specific and significant as this. It is unsettling, and perhaps easier and more desirable to turn away, but I am sorry to say that, given the current combined weight of extra, ultra-terrestrial testimony, it may very well be the time to pull our heads from the sand and start paying attention to what is really going on around us. Thank you so much for watching. I truly hope you found this video interesting. And an extra special thank you to our members, both here on YouTube and on Patreon. As ever, your support is tremendously appreciated. And if you cannot wait until my next video, why not watch the one suggested on screen now? Thank you again. Until next time.